is an enabler. And it's only, it can only go to a distance if the problem is well defined. So a very important piece is the problem statement has to be well defined. The change management after that is very important. With these two things in place, the project management is run properly. AI can do wonders.
You mentioned one of the points on predictive maintenance. I completely agree. And not only predictive maintenance on the vehicles, predictive maintenance also on the shop floor, also on the machines, also on your lines. These are the future use cases, and these are going to be radically changing the industry from where we are today and to where we are going to reach in future.
Today, if I have to decide a real use case of the I have to think about my business challenge. And when I talk about the business challenge, I have to prioritize something which is actually adding to my revenue, something which is helping me for my productivity and efficiency. And hence I divide my complete AI strategy into offense versus defense.
And that is what law is. Law follows business. We follow, what business does, then law comes into play and see how it can be regulated or encouraged in the best way possible. So again, coming to AI, so I could start with we have come a very long way from Henry Ford's time when he said, you can have any color as long as it is black.
The ability for the industry to reconfigure something at short notice is more practical because of the way technology evolved. And that is going to help us fast forward a lot of changes that we see in the next 1 to 2, 3 years and push it back into production.
I would describe AI, so if you reverse the word AI, it is information architecture.
Let's begin with our first panel discussion, the topic for which is AI in action, industry's best use cases, learnings, and caveats. And to participate, I would like to invite Mr. Hilal Khan, CIO, Honda Cars India. With almost 30 years of deep IT experience and a strong understanding of the automotive business at Honda, Toyota, and Daewoo Motors, Mr. Khan adds value by using IT as a strategy tool. An agile, inclusive, responsive, and strong communicator, adept at ideation and implementation, Mr. Khan is an expert in setting up IT in greenfield projects. A key member for Regional IT Committee for the Asian Oceanic region of Honda, Mr. Khan is a member of the Global IT Management Board of Honda, Japan. He is a recipient of several industry awards and honors, including CIO 100, CIO Club, and CIO Association of India. Please also welcome Mr. Manish Gupta, co-founder and CEO, Rezo.ai. Mr. Gupta has spent the last 20 years in technology and product roles while working with Global Logic, Spice Group, and RateGain. An alumnus of IIT Delhi, he has successfully delivered multiple global projects around automation and analytics. Realizing that the time had come for AI, he co-founded Rezo.ai to work in enterprises in the automotive industry, BFSI, and logistics to help gain efficiency, scale, and better economics while unlocking the next growth opportunity. I would also like to welcome Mr. Pravin Hungund, Chief Technologist and Global Head Technovation Center, CTO Office, Wipro Limited. Mr. Hungund is a passionate technologist, innovation leader, and with 3 decades of experience in the industry. Focused on driving digital transformation today, he has a major role in developing thought leadership POVs and solutions across industries at the convergence of emerging technologies, industry processes, and consumer behavior. Having provided global leadership for Wipro's Technovation Center, he was responsible for setting up the Silicon Valley Innovation Center on Mount View, California, USA. Mr. Hungund enjoys public speaking and has been a keynote speaker and panelist in international conferences. Please also welcome Mr. Nirvan Biswas, CTO, National Bulk Handling Corporation. An alumnus of IIT Mumbai, Mr. Nirvan Biswas is an IT leader with over 15 years of rich experience. He is involved in strategic planning and implementation of technologies to enhance operational efficiency at NBHC and allow greater measurement and mitigation of risks. Mr. Biswas was awarded the Newcomer CTO Award at the CIO Strategies Indian Awards 2008 by Time Magazine and was second runners-up at the CTO Awards 2004. Also in our panel is Mr. Vikrant Rana, the managing partner of SS Rana and Company. Welcome, Mr. Rana. With more than 24 years of experience, Mr. Rana has been ranked in the silver band for trademark prosecution and strategy by the World Trademark Review. He has been providing practical legal advice to many Fortune 500 companies as well as startups and is an IP facilitator with the Government of India's SIPP scheme. Mr. Rana is associated with TIFAC, Patient Facility Center, FICCI, Ministry of Small Scale Industries, CII, and IIM Ahmedabad, among others, and is a frequent speaker and panelist in seminars and conferences at these organizations. Please also welcome Mr. Parna Ghosh, Group CIO, Minda Group. With 30 years of experience spanning manufacturing, service, distribution, and retail, Mr. Ghosh is a winner of more than 50 awards in IT and leadership categories. He is a distinguished speaker in various IT forums. Mr. Ghosh is chairman for North Zone Digital Committee of ACMA, a member governing council of CII, Center for Digital Transformation, Knowledge and Innovation Council. Mr. Ghosh has worked with CNH Industrial, Honda Motorcycle and Scooters India, Tata Group, and Pricol. And please also welcome Mr. Anuj Guglani, who is going to be moderating this panel discussion. Over to you, Anuj.
Thanks a lot, Anita ma'am. And once again, a very warm welcome to all our panelists who are experts in their own right. They are the top thought leaders. So we have the top techies, we have the top CIOs of the industry, we have a person who's one of the top legals of our country, so and who's been working worldwide with so many companies for their IPs and patents. So I think we couldn't have asked for a better panel to kick off the fifth WAFit. And this panel, if you see the theme, the topic, it is AI in action, and also with the caveats. So AI has been a buzzword for a very long time now, but here we have got together to discuss AI in action at automotive and mobility, the best use cases and also the caveats for the future. So again, please allow me to share my screen where I shall share with you the things that we speakers were, sharing with each other as to what we're going to talk today, what we're going to discuss. So I'm just sharing the email that I had sent across to all the speakers. And here are a few thought cues that we had shared that yes, AI and ML have been the buzzwords for some time. And but still the way it's automating enterprise processes is fantastic. I know it transcends the functions, departments, and the sectors. At the same time, automotive is still taken, relatively as a new adopter of AI. It's still a slow adopter compared to other sectors like fintech, life science, and retail. But still, it's coming up very fast. So here we are to discuss. I know it's a very short time and the topics are very vast and deep, but still, why we mention all these topics, because, the people who are going to speak could be having their expertise in any one of them. So we didn't want to leave any area untouched. So AI in design, manufacturing, parts, assembly, equipment maintenance, AI in smart ordering, purchase, the way it's powering our supply chains, not just to tier one, but to tier two, tier three, tier N suppliers as well. Then in financial management and treasury, like, it had come that one of the top European automakers was getting their maximum net profit from currency, arbitrage. So AI can play a big role in that. Then AI in transportation, the driver risk management, driver monitoring, next age telematics, predictive maintenance of vehicles. It can be a huge step. The way we are servicing our vehicles, the way we are running our car workshops or vehicle workshops, the way we are calling out to our customers, then managing our CRMs, the consumer insights, product planning, branding, the works. And also the way the tech is dominating automotive, a key question which is on the top of the mind of a lot of people: would tech companies eventually, like the Teslas, IBMs, Googles, Amazons of the world, be the future automakers? Because we've already seen, and we forgot to mention Apple here, they're all working on their vehicles. Something to munch on. In 2020, IBM received more than 9,000 patents, most for any company, which they have been leading for decades now, out of which more than 2,000 patents were for AI. So the present use cases of AI, how do we see it panning out next 5 years, and the caveats and red flags against wrongful use. And with that, we will need the checks and balances, the legal frameworks and protection. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and would like to start with Parna, Mr. Parna Ghosh, who's the Group CIO of Uno Minda, NK Minda Group. Sir, if we can begin with you, please.
Thank you, Anuj, and congratulations for organizing this virtual event. And thanks to all the other panelist members and all the listeners. Anuj, I'll just start with, one, rider that AI and clubbed with IoT and analytics. These three are not, new in auto now. They are really changing the scenarios in most of the organizations, especially OEMs and auto ancillaries both. I will give some perspectives from my organization, how we are looking at AI and what will be the future of AI at Uno Minda. So if you divide your segmentation or your scope in terms of process, then people, and then products. So I will start with the processes, and you rightly pointed out, like example, manufacturing is one of the major areas where AI will be playing a very, very big role, especially in the areas of capacity planning. In today's time, when the customer, orders or customer forecasts or plans are haywire, and many areas, what is happening is we are not able to, get the leverage or get the benefits out of the right forecasting and right planning. There lies the capacities which are unutilized or maybe underutilized. How to make sure that those are optimally used, and that is what we are looking at AI in a very, very big way in terms of our capacity planning. Second comes material planning. So in material planning also, many times we'll end up with excess inventories or wrong bill of materials or many other issues in the shop floor. So I think AI will definitely look at the material buying pattern, the consumption pattern, also the demand demand from the customers. Ultimately, sorry, they will be able to predict better inventory planning, which the traditional MRPs or the material planning softwares or the systems are not able to do that. So this is the second area. Third area is in terms of supply chain. So in supply chain, as you know, during the pandemic, wave one and wave two, many suppliers are struggling with cash flow, working capital, and many other areas. So how to, understand who are your right supply chain partners who can really contribute in your areas, who may go for a bankruptcy, who may go for liquidation of, funds or something like that. So that's supply chain financing forecasting is getting done by AI, and there are many use cases coming up. Let's go to the people area. In people, we are trying to find out AI, and we have implemented one of the largest, I will say EHRM software very, very recently. And through this, backed up with one of the AI components, we are trying to find out who are the potential people who will be, leaving the organization, who needs a big break, who are the right, successors for the managers. And what kind of talent, what kind of skills, what kind of competencies are available in the organization, or there are no competencies available in those specific areas. I think that is also where AI is trying to help us. Please understand one thing: wherever there is volume of data and manual processing is impossible, AI is the only solution. And the last but not the least, I will come to the products part. So after process and people, products is the one of the major areas where AI is going to play a big role, especially in the advent of electric vehicle. And as we all know, electric vehicle by 2030, the prediction is to go for 60 to 70% penetration in the vehicle market, as per the government and the other agencies' prediction. And there comes a connected car and electric mobility, where AI is the component without which the car, the computer on wheels will never work. So there, I mean, I don't want to discuss the use cases here because there are so many use cases in terms of connected cars and electric mobility. Like example, telematics, your analytics. Everywhere AI is going to play a major role. You mentioned one of the points on predictive maintenance. I completely agree. And not only predictive maintenance on the vehicles, predictive maintenance also on the shop floor, also on the machines, also on your lines. These are the future use cases, and these are going to be radically changing the industry from where we are today and to where we are going to reach in future through the implementations. And I think it's not a buzzword. It is actually the currently the disruptions are happening through AI, and it's not far away that we see most of the companies will be smart enough. We are talking about intelligent automation. We are talking about smart organizations, and obviously AI will be the major component in driving those scenarios in most of the organizations. I'll stop here, Anuj.
Panada, I think you've given an extremely important ringside view of how it's panning out. And as Panada rightly mentioned, that wherever you have big data, you have to have AI in place. And as he mentioned, that it's not just the predictive maintenance of vehicles, even the machines, the equipment at the shop floor. Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. With the help of AI, IoT, the machines are themselves, sending the notification, hey, I might fail. Hey, I'm about to fail. Or hey, my maintenance is not up to the mark. So all this data, crunching happening, all this data assimilation, which is there. So much of consumer data, with a few companies, how these companies are using this data, what are the technologies that they are applying, what are the future applications, and some use cases. So with that, I think let's come to Mr. Manish Gupta. Manish, he's an alumnus of IIT Delhi and working on the cutting edge of AI technologies, and he has his company Rezo.ai. So Manish, we'd like to hear from your side. What's keeping you busy in AI?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anuj, for this opportunity, and really kind of have a great forum here. So I just wanted to kind of maybe spend 30 seconds talking about the background of AI and the trust that I have had in the past. So AI has been there in the research for a really long time. So in year 2000, I was associated with a self-driving cars project in Germany as an internship, where one of the major, the automobile major, was working on the cameras installed in the car and helping the, doing the object detection and defining that, basis that as to how can the car drive on its own. So that was like almost 20 years back to 2003, 2004, where I was part of drug discovery research using AI and ML, sponsored by European Union in Europe. So it's been there in the research for a really long time. It's only recently in the last 3 years or 2 years or maybe 5 years that it has started coming into the mainstream. And you're right. So all the industries across the world are kind of adopting it, and automobile is picking up pretty big. So few use cases that has really come across to us has been, on the manufacturing side, as Pranita talked about it. At the same time, it's also about the logistics optimization as to if the raw material or the stuff needs to be delivered from location A to location B, what should be the right route, what are the right timings, how to kind of reduce the time of of deliveries between the two locations. What is the right route to be taken? What is the right time when the vehicle should move? So from there to maybe even from a end customer perspective as to how do you qualify the leads? I mean, if a user is showing an interest of buying a certain vehicle, how do you optimize? How do you automate? How do you figure out what's the interest level of that user? And basis that, you can actually prioritize in the next level as to which users to be kind of reached out in what priority. Then there could be even things like, having a chat with the customers on a regular basis. Are they happy, not happy? What are the next plans of upgradation, or maybe, additional vehicle buying, to even things like telemetry, where you can actually figure out as to what is the predictive maintenance of the car. Is the car doing 100%? Is the car not there? What is the right time? So helping the end customer get get the services done on time actually helps in terms of the efficiency of the car, the happiness of the customer, and overall it's a win-win for everyone. To even a point where is the driver in the right state of mind, physically, mentally, emotionally, to be there, to be driving the car. So one could actually uh, have the patterns of the driver, and basis those patterns, one can see whether the current situation, the current state of the driver is different in terms of the typical pattern. So, for example, if a person is intoxicated, their pattern will be very different as against a typical pattern when they are typically driving. So, these kind of things can really come into the mainstream, and they are actually. And this can actually help take things or elevate things from where they are to the next level. And the way we should actually look at AI essentially is, uh, this is a way by which the next growth is possible, and it's only possible by having a mindset where we are converting generalist into specialist. So any workflow, any aspect which is totally human driven today, or it's like different steps, with AI coming in, those users or those stakeholders which are kind of managing the show, they will, instead of going from 0 to 90 or 100, they will be then focusing on taking things from 80 to 100. So that way they become super specialist in terms of running the show. So I mean, it's just getting started, I would say, Anuj, and it's a long way to go.
Sure, Manish. So, Manish, you being an AI specialist, and as you had mentioned that, back in the campus also, you had worked with this car maker on, self-driving vehicles. So, panning out these 2 decades, what do you see where we are right now as a country when it comes to AI, and what are the, top 3 things we need to do to be a major player in AI?
So I think there are like, what I can see is in terms of, so let's try and break it down into 3 portions. One is the manufacturing thing. In the manufacturing, it's all about how do we shorten the implement the manufacturing cycle. That's one. In terms of the buying experience, how can we up the buying experience? Are we delivering the things to the customer what they really want? Are we giving them the personalized experience? And then it's the post sale cycle, because even that's very important. That is the deciding, because that experience, the post sale experience, is what decides the next elevation of the user, as to which model, which vehicle, which brand would they want to buy maybe 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, or what brand would they recommend to their network. So what really needs to be done is each section needs to be studied in details as to what is the kind of experience, what is the kind of output that you get, and basis that we need to kind of deep dive and start mapping as to how AI can kind of help evolve to the next level. So net, what I'm really saying is, the way we should look at AI is that AI is an enabler. So we need to first understand the current workflow that we have, the current operations that we have, and understand the weakest link there, the either the weakest or the longest link there, and then figure out how do we solve it with new technologies, new options, whether it's AI, whether it's ML, IoT, whatever it is. So that is I would say, the approach that one should look at.
Fair enough. Fair enough, Manish. Point taken. So I think time to switch gears now, and I think let's get back to enterprise IT specialist. I'm talking about a gentleman who, around I think 4 or 5 years back, in a way, pioneered connected vehicle technology at India. He for his company, for his consumers, they were amongst the first to launch a connected car app, and I'm talking about Mr. Hilal Khan. He's the CIO at Honda Cars India. So Hilal San, so the journey when it started, 4 or 5 years back, you pioneered connected technology, and now talking about AI, how AI is empowering your consumers or your shop floor. A few stories there, sir, if you can share.
Yes. Good morning, Anuj. Many congratulations for this fifth edition of WAFit, and good morning to all the esteemed panelists. Uh, am I audible, Manish?
Yes,
Sorry, Anuj
absolutely.
said the context, so I don't know whether they have made my discussion a little bit more easier or a little bit more challenging. But let me discuss a very different subject altogether. Let's leave AI aside for the time being and try to understand as to what is happening in the auto industry today. Auto industry, as a matter of fact, is going through disruption. When we talk about case that's connected, autonomous, shared, and electric, there are a lot many challenges that the auto industry is going through. And on the other hand, IT industry is also going through disruption. And that disruption is on account of IoT, 5G, AI, analytics, cloud, so many things. This is the best time query or best time to understand as to what can be done using this technology so that we can solve the problems with the auto industry or the challenges with the auto industry. But when we talk about the challenges or the implementation of, say, for example, AI, we really need to understand the context of the business and the context of the country. Because the economy or the fundamentals of Indian economy or Indian workforce is very, very different than the rest of the world. We have also discussed about the adoption of AI in BFSI or healthcare industry vis-a-vis auto industry. Manish touched upon various segments of the auto industry, from manufacturing to supply chain to sales and after sales. How I really look at it, today, if I have to decide a real use case of the AI, I have to think about my business challenge. And when I talk about the business challenge, I have to prioritize something which is actually adding to my revenue, something which is helping me for my productivity and efficiency, and hence I divide my complete AI strategy into offense versus defense, and something which is related to defense. Say I'm sorry, please don't consider it otherwise. Say for example, manufacturing, wherein we are talking about productivity and efficiency, and then we see that deploying AI in the Indian context, where industrial robots or AI was kind of already existing, may make sense, but it can still wait, or the adoption may be slower. But something which is actually adding to your revenue, helping you design your marketing campaigns, helping you understand the buying potential of your customer, help you design or decide the net promotion score from a customer in terms of his willingness to buy a particular car, a particular model at a particular time at a particular price. So we have to think as to from where we have to start. As a matter of fact, it is everywhere. But in terms of adoption, somewhere the adoption is higher, somewhere the adoption is lesser. You mentioned about the connected car. Yes, we have um, which year? 2015 December. We were the first one to launch connected car in India. Now, when we talk about connected car, this in itself is not the objective. It's about the fun, safety, and convenience for my customer. But at the back end, with the help of IoT, the kind of data that I am having, I really need to understand as to how this data is going to help me for various of my business challenges, be it related to predictive maintenance, be it related to product planning, be it related to, say, for example, usage-based insurance, or things related to management of my inventories or inventory carrying costs. So there are a lot of things which are happening in the auto industry today. And in terms of adoption, I believe that the evolution AI in the auto industry at a time when pandemic is playing and rather posing a big challenge to the industry, or to all of us, it's going hand in hand, and that is really leading in the customer behavior, and the current challenges of the auto industry is actually helping us define lot many business cases. So this is where exactly we are. I have lot many use cases to cover, but for the time being I stopped.
Hilal san, I could not agree more with you on the very fact that, AI, as you rightly mentioned, AI is not the end, but it's the means to an end. I think a lot of people get embroiled in that buzzword that kuch AI mein karna hai. Let's do something in AI. Our boss would be happy, our MD would be happy, our board would be happy. It will be nice, buzz in the media as well. Let's do something in AI. But a lot of people forget that what is the end objective that they need to, fulfill, achieve by, implementing these technologies. What are the enterprise procedures and targets of the board that the board has set that they need to achieve, rightly said. So with that, if we can switch gears and get our tech experts back into the picture. So I'd like to invite Mr. Pravin to please share what kind of, you already got the perspective from the CIOs, what they expect for technologies and technologists to, perform. So how have you been powering the enterprise through AI? What have been a few applications and use cases that you have worked on?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. A joy and pleasure to be on this discussion. I'll take 3 use cases quickly before I conclude my conversation, but I'll bring them through the journey right now. Right now, I think we've been talking AI just like the automotive industry or the fintech industry, which is a horizontal to the entire industry landscape out there. AI also is turning out to be horizontal for multiple emerging technologies, and I'll probably cover that as we go through the conversation. But if you look at the last, a lot has happened in the last 6 years on technology compared to what happened in the last 60 years, right? And a lot of AI has moved from hype to a complete happening environment. And the topic of the discussion today is extremely interesting, right? And see, we've moved away from maybe even 2 years back. We were talking of art of possibilities with AI. Right? Many of them have started becoming the possibility today. Right now, why is an important aspect? But before going to why, many years back, Peter Drucker, once mentioned that there are only 2 things in any business, right? And obviously, from the world that I come from, I would definitely want to believe what he said was perfectly correct. He said one is innovation, and second is marketing, right? And the rest of it is all cost. Now, I don't know whether it was true about many years back when that statement was made, but in today's world, and rightly, I think many of the panel members, both Hilal and Manish, got out saying that there's so much of disruption happening on the industrial side today, right? And that industrial side disruptions are blended with multiple things, and AI being a horizontal across industries, across technology stacks, what it can potentially do and what it's already doing is very, very disruptive, right? Let's talk of 1 or 2 concepts, right? And as I talk into it, I'll probably talk of one, how the the buying and selling cycles are changing, right? So if you look at what AI allowed us to do with structured data, a lot of what you've seen in the AI in the world today is all structured data. A lot of ERP data, CRM data, supply chain management data, which is already captured and stored in the system over the last 60 years. That was the first low-hanging fruit. And that's what we saw happening in the industry also. Entire B2C world, the banks, the retails, right, the buying behavior patterns, marketing, everything got very, very early stage automated using AI or augmented using AI, right? Now, that is a very interesting concept. Now, if you use that concept to move from a mass production, thinking that automotive did in the early years, to the need to get into a mass customization cycle today. And this is not just automotive, right? I can tell you, when you look at digital natives today, their loyalty is to no brand, right? They're only loyal to the experience, or they're loyal to what they get out of it. Now, if I look at mass customization, we've worked on interesting conversions of technologies for buying a car, right? If you want to buy a car and I want to look at mass customization, the technologies here, the cost benefit analysis probably will take a couple of more years to allow. Maybe a high net worth can do it today. But what I can do today, sitting where you're sitting right now, using spatial computing and a mixed reality setup, I can project a complete car in your world, in your living room, with your family, with your loved ones, without having to step out of your environment, right? And you can go ahead and a remote design expert or a consultant can actually work with you to spec your car, not just from aesthetics, look and feel, color, but he can also allow you to spatial computing, right? Can I know how far the steering is from my seat when I sit down? How much of boot space is there for me? Will the car fit into my garage? Many of those things are allowed, can be done using AI plus mixed reality, spatial computing techniques. The whole idea of detecting emotions when I'm trying to sell something as a car or a feature of a car, the interiors, exteriors, all of that can be captured using a 5G and a context correlation engine. And I can tell you probably the car that you like without you probably knowing exactly what your likes and dislikes are. Many years back, we saw Walmart doing that, right? But that's happening more out there. The other thing you can look at is actually design engineering the car also, right? In the same environment context we're talking of, you can actually go ahead and decide what type of car you want, what type of sound the engine generates. All of that on your mixed reality world, right? A very interesting concept of how mass customization can drive hyper relevance in the industry out there, right? Now, we looked at B2C being an early adopter, and this can extend. I'm probably going to flip a little bit more because I wanted to cover another topic from the same context, right? If you look at, and all of this was supervised, unsupervised learning, not getting details of technology itself, but machine learning was there, has been there, and you could do many of these things out there, right? Now, if you have to flip from the concept, and I think many of us, the panelists earlier spoke of manufacturing itself, right? Now, again, I want to talk of a very important topic now. All of us aware of the world called SMAC, Social Mobile Analytics Cloud, right? 10, 12, 15 years back, the industry buzzword started happening and it started taking shape. What it typically did was consumerized IT for us, right? The whole information technology today, many of us carry probably smartphones with more functional features than what were there on a high-end system or maybe a mainframe a couple of years back, right? And that consumerization of IT transformed a lot of IT. The CIO world changed completely, right? Businesses started looking at scalable and elastic design rather than provisioning for peak load, right? And the whole cost-benefit analysis, efficiencies, the whole aspect of sustainable models for businesses started taking shape then. Today, the same thing is happening with operations technologies, right? And when I look at manufacturing, and I can talk of operations technologies, which are practically very high-end systems, configured, engineered, and you need to be in the zone to be productive. Pandemic disrupted that, right? Even in the best case scenario, less than 50% of people were allowed to enter a factory, and you have to maintain productivity, maintain efficiency, keep the engines running, machines running with half the capacity out there, right? And that's slowly started shifting the concept of technology from a hands-free operating model to today. You're you're practically accepting the fact of a human-free operating model, right? And 90% of what's happening there is through an AI environment that's getting created there, right? So when I look at converging IT and OT, we looked at IT, we looked at OT. I know a lot of stuff can happen in OT, whether it is field assist, expert assist, remote assist, right? You can get in, you can get an expert on the call with you. He can augment, annotate, and tell you that, maybe check this filter, check that, change that, modify this, maybe this is not the problem. All of that can be done without a human being physically present in that world today, right? But let me fast forward briefly, right? Look at IT and OT, and the convergence of IT and OT is one aspect of it where you disrupt the entire aftermarket activities in automotive industries, right? Blend that back with some layers around engineering tech, the whole CAD, CAD systems out there. And if you bring the game engines into that space, right, you will start looking at a very, very consumerized, capex intensive industries. And when I talk of capex intensive, I'm not just talking of factories, I'm talking of very, very complex systems like oil rigs, oil refineries, smart cities, the whole the planet itself as an ecosystem. And you start talking of hyper-connected ecosystems out there, where you can practically drive the goals of sustainability in a more controlled world. Typically talking of people, profit, and planet. Planet becomes prime from a sustainability standpoint, right? And all of these that we're talking of from a technology standpoint can converge and help us drive efficiencies out there. One of the last things I'll leave with you with me on the thinking there is, if you look at the whole area around what is happening now to the next 5 years, right? We've seen the whole idea around using training models, using reinforcement learning to train systems which are not, which can be done without with unstructured data, right? You learn as you go and you do self-learning systems there. What is happening out there? I'll talk of 4 key pillars or concepts that we talk about. One is a computable environment. When we talk of autonomous cars, I think a lot of us have seen them at work. Trucking systems are already available out there. Now think of an autonomous system, right? An autonomous factory, right? Think of a computable environment. I'm in this room right now. If everything that I'm doing, my emotions, my actions, temperature, the humidity, the wind, force, all of that can be computed, and recommendations can come back to me for optimizing what's happening in my room out here. That can happen across a large space. Think of a smart factory, think of an oil rig, think of a refinery, right? The whole idea of computable environments will help us create things called cognitive command centers, right? So an expert in an automotive shop floor can be sitting in his home and be able to make judgments which are more grounded, which are more closer to the real world, and be able to make decisions based on that. So the human eye will never replace vision from a compute perspective. AI can do that, right? So when humans work with AI, and that's where the whole idea of man-machine interfaces, human-augmented machine systems will come in, right? Man will continue thinking of his 5 senses and using data from AI to sort of augment intelligence, augment experience, augment skills in a virtual world, right? And that's the model. So if I talk of augmented virtuality, talk of things like federated AI or federated mechatronics out there, AI blended simulation and modeling for systems, and the whole human augmented system, we can talk of a very, very different world in the next 3 to 5 years. And a lot of these today, so as a technologist, I can visualize it. I can see it in the distant future. Maybe 2 years back, this would not have made sense. If I had spoken about this to anybody, they would have said, this is all good for a Steven Spielberg movie, not for the real world, right? We're seeing those evolve slowly, more by pandemic, post-pandemic world, more by post-digital world, that happening real. And that's where, we've been thinking of a concept of digital in the virtual world as a trend, as a pattern, as a path out there. I'll pause. It's very passionate about this topic, but let me not spill over my time. Thank you, Anuj.
Well, that's fantastic, Mr. Pravin, and your passion for AI is clearly visible. The kind of use cases that you just shared, I think they were phenomenal. In fact, when you mentioned that during this time of lockdown and pandemic, it's absolutely possible and plausible to get those virtual test drives at home where you don't have to report even once. But there was a very interesting trend that one of the senior guys from Mercedes-Benz had shared in our program last year. It was around September, just 1 or 2 months after the long lockdown that we had last year. He had shared that the E-class and the S-class vehicles, they used to get delivered at home. The customer would not even come for delivery. What to say about looking at the car or finalizing the deal? Everything would happen either at home or office. Just when the unlockdown started happening, these customers who had never seen the face of the dealership started coming because they want to just get out. They want to just go out, reach out, look and feel, touch and feel, talk to a human face to face. So those aspects also possibly either they can expedite or hinder the adoption of AI, because as you rightly mentioned that AI can really augment the existing human capability. So somewhere possibly it might not be just artificial intelligence, it just might be a hybrid intelligence, the natural, human, and the artificial. So something on the consumer behavior or the adoption of AI, which might expedite or kind of slow down the adoption. Something on that quickly.
Yeah, see, I think the expedite will happen largely, Anuj, because and you rightly said, I think the social behavior patterns are changing, right? And that's why when we looked at early statements saying innovation is extremely important today, is because exactly because of that, right? If you looked at it about supply chain, we've been talking of it, and I've been very interested in the concept where if in March, April, May last year, if the apparel industry had noticed that people are going to be only talking on a virtual conference like this, right? They would have probably stopped manufacturing pants, right? They would have only realized that shirts and t-shirts will sell. It could have reconfigured the entire model. And the reason why we see an adoption of AI at a convergence layer getting a little challenging for the next 1 to 2 years is because you need to first model human behavior and see how it will shift. Right? And gone are the days when we used to have a 5-year plan or a 1-year plan. Right? Today, your AI has to come live in 3 months, go into production in 6 months, and you have to hit the market in a very short span. Right? So the behavior patterns is one thing that we need to look at in terms of what will happen from a consumption perspective. The whole idea of how quickly we can get unstructured data modeled into an environment, right? Because a lot of AI, what could have been done has been done, right? All that we're talking of right now is using unstructured data. And there, the pattern identification is another big challenge out there, right? In terms of how do you get those patterns, get the unstructured environments with operation stack, MES systems, all of that blended back in the layer, right? But what will happen faster is the fact that you can transform technology very fast. See, a lot of our technology is software defined, right? 5G software defined connectivity. You can look at the whole concept of AI as a software defined intelligence. Look at AR, VR, MR as software defined experiences. Look at the whole idea around a blockchain as software defined trust, right? The ability for the industry to reconfigure something at short notice is more practical because of the way technology evolved. And that is going to help us fast forward a lot of changes that we see in the next 1 to 2, 3 years and push it back into production, right? There are challenges around biasing, around ethics, around planet, around sustainability, which are much bigger issues, but bigger problems that need to get addressed. Technology is evolving, whether it's explainability of AI, looking at transfer learning elements, looking at how you can unbundle and debias the environments using algorithms. Security is also evolving, whether it's homomorphic encryptions to use data which is not owned by you, but needed by you to deliver an ecosystem out there. There's a lot of stuff happening out there. I think it's a very, very interesting time. This is the best time to be in the industry and look at what can be done or what should be done out there. I'll pause here. Thank you.
Beautiful. So taking this phrase that this is the best time to be in the industry. So let's go to our next speaker, Mr. Nirvan, who's also a techie, and he's requested us that before he begins to speak, he would like us to play a video, which he has sent across to us. So Kunal, I would request you to please play this video in full screen. I think.
Thank you, Anuj.
This was a fantastic video. Thanks a ton for this, Nirvan. And I think I really love the ending, because the ending, in a way, is synonymous with that the technology has to have a human perspective. And incidentally, this is being done by several companies in India as well. I think a company which comes to my mind is Camcom. They had even 1 hour award for best innovation earlier this year. So they are doing something like this, and it's a great way to, you've actually shown AI in action through this video. So over to you.
So thanks, Anuj, for having me, and thanks to all the panelists. I would, since I've been a proponent of this technology in terms of writing algorithms, and I've been writing algorithms for a pretty long time now. I would describe AI. So if you reverse the word AI, it is information architecture, right? So if I have a robust information architecture in my organization, and whether it's automotive, whether it's any other, uh, industry per se, if I have a robust information architecture, I would be able to write various different use cases in terms of the uh, algorithm that I want to write. Now, depending on the use case, of course, I would select which is the algorithm I want to write, and of course, depending on the output in terms of accuracy, whether it's false positive and all that, I then move ahead. So I think the basic factor in us understanding where to use and why to use and how to use, I think these are the aspects one needs to look at. Now, coming to the automotive, if you look, Anuj, if you look, and other panelists as well, if you look at various aspects of, for example, design, right? Now you have NVIDIA architecture, who has come up with its own architectural model in terms of design prototyping, and so what the other automotive companies, how they are being able to use that architecture model, and thereby coming up with a economic prototyping. So for example, even your General Motors, for example, uses something like, if I remember properly, Dreamcatcher. Now, Dreamcatcher does nothing but it again uses algorithm to do economic prototyping. So various use cases. So again, I go back now, whether it's a design use case, whether it's a manufacturing use case, what I showed in the video, and I just thought that let me start by just showing what is actually happening. And there is so much of data which is getting accumulated, that in my opinion, if you ask me, there is a dearth of engineers. There is a dearth of the number of use cases one can work with, and of course, there is a dearth of the research and development, projects, or the kind of money or the kind of investment that it needs in the automotive. Otherwise, there is no reason why I don't suppose that this industry can surpass the other industries per se. If I think one of your panelists, if I remember, I think it was Hilal, that who mentioned that there are other industries who are doing pretty well in terms of the adoption and all that. Uh, I would say the adoption lies in how we implement things and how quickly we implement things, right? So so there has to be a match between what we need to do, how we need to do, uh, and what are the outputs, and what are the defined metrics as outputs that we can come out with, which with the automotive management, or rather all of us says that yes, this is the definitive metric, and this is what the customer or the manufacturer or anybody, even the dealer in between, would require. So if those customized metrics, if those are defined, those use cases, and there is somebody to work on, most important, uh, I don't see a reason why this can't be done. I mean, just look at that video, Anuj. You have BMW looking at the shade of the cars and comparing it with the database, millions of database and saying that yes, it's matched or not matched. Or Audi, for example, today, if there is a crack anywhere in the car, it can measure against the any of the crack which has been performed earlier, and thereby what is the metric that it can come out with, and what is the recommendation that it gives. So somebody was talking about predictive analytics. So predictive analytics, or I mean, how this will stem up? This can only stem up by the more of the work that we keep on doing in this area. I think that is required in this industry, Anuj, in my opinion.
All right, that's nice to know. So you've given this Nirvana a very nice twist that when we talk about AI, what is more important is IA. So the information architecture, as you mentioned, so as how you label the entire database and what kind of indexing you do would play a pivotal role in how solid and how effective your AI technology or application is. So with that, let's move forward and let's now get in a person who has been very patiently listening to us, who is one of the top legal eagles of our country, who is giving his expert legal advice to dozens of probably hundreds of companies in India and the world on IP and patents, and they specialize in tech protection, the legal compliances. So getting in Mr. Vikrant Rana, who's a managing partner at SS Rana and Company. So Vikrant, what do you have to say about these new technologies coming up like AI? How do you feel this entire thing will pan out, and what are the basic legal compliances and protection the enterprise and the consumers should have in place?
Thank you so much, Anuj. First of all, congratulations on this wonderful panel and the topic. It's quite a relevant topic. Let me just share, when Anuj just messaged me, is it okay if you go last? That reminded me of Scorpion's song, Two Steps Behind. And that is what law is. Law follows business. We follow, what business does, then law comes into play and see how it can be regulated or encouraged in the best way possible. So again, coming to AI, so I could start with we have come a very long way from Henry Ford's time when he said, you can have any color as long as it is black. The video we saw and the presentation we have seen till now, it's amazing. You could have a very personalized automobile or a car, and that is so different from the time when the first cars came into play. So that's the kind of consumer involvement, the consumer way we are able to deal. Coming on the legal aspect, there are a couple of issues. Let me start with how AI and the automobile industry or AI in general, what kind of issues can crop up. So one to start with could be the ethical issues, which could be social and financial issues, because it would lead to certain positive things, but also the things which could having more AI could lead to labor issues at times. Those things the government and the companies would have to keep in mind, that those people are also engaged in something productive that way. The second point I would say is on the accountability. Accountability would be a big thing. Who would be responsible? Does AI have a legal persona or not? Most of you would remember Saudi Arabia gave the first citizenship to a robot, Sophia. So they acknowledged that maybe as a publicity stunt, but they did acknowledge giving a citizenship to a robot. So do AI, can they have a legal rights or a persona there? Google per se, they have been saying that it is too early for AI to have that kind of a persona because of many other issues, including moral issues and the liability issues which will come into play. Uber self-driven car had an accident, and that was not recent. That was much a couple of years ago. I think in 2018. And this person who was riding a bicycle got hit by a driverless car. The driver was sitting inside and he was watching a video. So Uber was not made liable in this particular case because it was held that charges were not pressed, but it was against the driver, the non-driving driver in the car, who was charged as he was the backup driver, and it was alleged that he, being in the driver's seat, had the ability to take over the control of vehicle in an emergency. So that's important to see from the liability and the accountability part of it, like the Geneva Convention and the Vienna Convention on road traffic. They right now do not have anything on AI assisted cars. I mean, as a policy, they have said it cannot be there on the cars without a driver. So that is as per the conventions right now, but I'm sure these would change in the future. And US, certain states have come up with legislations. And like I said, business, once we have these kind of inventions, innovations coming into India and rest of the world, those legislations would also start coming up on the liability issue, on the issue on the data privacy. I think data privacy is again a very important aspect, because so many products would be going into a car, AV, EV and AV, both cars. So those components would be talking to each other. They would be collecting data. Who would be responsible for that data? Would it be the company? Would it be the owner? Would it be the companies having those separate components? So those issues would crop up. Then the data on the GDPR, what kind of data can be shared, the PII, the personal identifiable information, what aspect of it cannot be under GDPR, it cannot be shared. So what can be shared, the route you're sharing. So those issues will crop up. We had the case of, I think 2015, BMW and Chrysler, they had some issues on the car software issues. And it was on a car recall. So the software patches had to be updated to ensure that the issue does not crop up, because I think almost 2.2 million BMW cars had some unlocked issue because of a software issue. So those liability issues would also come up, how to handle those liability issues, the data privacy issues, the data sharing issues would be quite important to see from that perspective. Then coming to the insurance bit, this would also lead to different, I think one of the speakers did mention about the insurance. So that is, after sales, which would have the benefit of AI about the speed, about the route, about the object in front or at the rear, how the accident happened. Is it the normal for that person to drive like this or not? So those issues would also be useful in the insurance matters. AI in the industry would also lead to more transparency, explanatory of AI decisions, how they are taken, and also the decisions which could be overturned by somebody else, like the cyber attacks. I was watching this episode of Upload, on one of these channels, and there was a car accident which was in a driverless car, and there was a car accident manipulated by somebody from outside by hacking into the car system. So who's responsible? How do you come to that? Who really was responsible for that? So those issues would also come into play. Then related would be the safety and the reliability, how safe these things are, how reliable they are. The safety regulations would kick in, what could be allowed, what measure of it could be allowed, and those things would be kept in mind when we are working with AI in this industry. Data protection, I've shared, the different stakeholders would have a right to that. The person owning the car, person driving the car, each components and the car as a whole, all that data would be collected, and how it would be shared under different data protection regimes would also be a point to be considered. The interface softwares, then after sales also would be important. After sales, now we have after sales of components, but then there could be an after sales of softwares. What kind of softwares could be plugged in later after I purchase a EV or a AV? What is the liability in case of those softwares? What could be purchased easily, what could not be, what would break the insurance, if I do that, those issues would also crop up. It's a matter of time when the softwares for not from the car owner but from a third party could be used, and the liability issues for the same would also come in. Then I think one more could be on the open data and the data sharing. Like we know the Tesla, they've made their patents available in public domain for others to use. So that's kind of open data and fair competition would also come in. Would we look at something similar in the telecom industry of standard? Would standards come into play for the automobile industry also? That's again a big question out there. So more or less, I would zero it down to accountability, transparency, safety, data protection, data sharing, and IP again would be the cornerstone. How you create right, how you have the monopoly on the particular AI. If it is possible in certain countries to get a software on algorithm, India is not possible to have those algorithms patented, but there could be ways around it. So IP would also be crucial, like somebody did mention about the 9,000, Anuj mentioned about the 9,000 patents being filed. So it's not just the US now, we have AI patents, and especially in the vehicle industry, a lot of patents being filed. So I see a lot of traction in this particular area. And that is the first point for the industry to see what's happening. What is the future going to be like? IP database is the perfect place to start to see what each entity or even non-car or non-vehicle entities are looking at AI and the vehicles or the automotive industry. So IP, I would say, would be a cornerstone to really have that kind of a monopoly to create your barriers to competition. And that would be important to ensure that you file the right IP at the right place in the right jurisdiction. So Anuj, I think that was more or less on the legal side. I'll be happy to take more questions and take it further from there.
Great, that's fantastic, Vikrant. I think that sounded more like a mini masterclass on the legal aspects of AI. And I think we have a question also, which is open to all the speakers here. I'm just copying and pasting it in Zoom. I got it on WhatsApp. The question is, okay, it sounds more like from a consumer perspective. The question goes, I feel unsafe with so many devices collecting my data. Most inevitable, like my phone OS, or like my streaming music device, which are now a necessity. So I also feel helpless as I need these services. So what is the future of my privacy powered by AI? With a smiley.
I think that's a big dilemma for all of us. Do I use that service or do I not? That's the big thing. So it's important that everybody comes together to have a proper check and balances being provided by the government to ensure that the data which is being collected, the data collection of data is inevitable. You've watched Netflix, what kind of movies you are watching, they would recommend what to watch next. That is inevitable. So that data collection is very much there, but what data they should be collecting and what data they can share with somebody is important to put a check on that it should not be a person, the personal information, identifiable information which could be shared with third parties. So I think data protection laws would be very crucial in the times to come, that this data which is there out there open, this data could be shared with the wrong players also. So that should be protected. I mean, we have the credit card issues. Your card information could be shared with somebody, and somebody you may be getting calls, or data could be hacked into. So I believe, it's important to have those data protection laws in place at the earliest, and it would be an evolving animal. It wouldn't be a static thing. It would be quite dynamic, and it would keep changing with the technology we adopt. And we need to ensure that the laws keep changing. Though a two-step behind, like I said, but it's important to keep pace with business, keep pace with the changing scenario, and a check on the data protection usage, like the GDPR, has to come into place to save the data and not to be misused, even by the companies who collect it.
Absolutely, fair enough. Any other speaker wants to comment on this question before we move to the next question, please? All right, nobody, no problem. Okay, there's one more question again received by us. It's connected to the video that we showed before in the advanced presentation. This question also is open to all. So it says that BMW can do these kind of AI solutions. BMW or the big companies. What about SMEs? Who are in majority, the smaller companies who comprise actually more than 90% of the companies in our country or anywhere in the world. So basically, the question is, how do we truly democratize AI technologies at the enterprise or companies? That's the question.
So Anuj, can I answer, Anuj?
Sure, sure. It was before your video. You have all the right.
No, it's not my video. But see, it's a good point. Now, if you look at other industries, the way they are democratizing the technology per se, in terms of having excellence, center of excellence, or a pool of engineers who are just working on this part of it, and then selling the components to different SMEs in every industry. Now, why can't that work in the automotive industry as well? I mean, I'm sure it can work. Now, if you look at healthcare, right? Now, healthcare, just imagine you just need a couple of engineers who are, or rather, outsource it to a couple of engineers who will give you the kind of solution that you are requiring. Now, in the same manner, the SMEs can also work in that respect. So I don't see a reason why it can't happen. This versus that. It's only that I think automotive industry for far long has been saying that okay, we want to do it, we have the experience, and we will do it. Now, if you outsource it, there is no harm. So, for example, uh, Infosys or even the smaller IT organization today has an automotive, engineering department that can work on your use cases. And if they can deliver that in a time bound and in a reasonable pricing, this thing, there is no reason why, and that can be further shared. So, I mean, of course, shared in a sense that not shared, but yes, I mean, it works in other industries. It should work in this as well. I don't see a reason why it should. Anuj?
Okay, fair enough. That's a fair question. So, okay, one more question. I think that might be the last question that we will take. This question is that, okay, it's from a business owner. Okay, as a business owner, what should be my precautions on using AI technology at my company? Especially, please be mindful that I cannot afford expensive CIOs. So, anybody wants to take this question?
Anuj, can I take that?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So, so Anuj, I think as a business owner, let's also first understand that even, and this kind of overlaps with the previous, the answer to the previous question as well, where BMW can do these AI solutions. What about the SMEs? So in all, what we also need to understand is this question was, both these questions were kind of big concerns maybe 10 years back. But today, all these solutions have been productized to great extent, which basically means that it's more like a plug and play today. So any enterprise, any business wants to adopt AI, they don't really have to. I mean, obviously, you need to have the right team to support that within the business, but at the same time, it's all about tying up with the right product companies, right solutions in the market, and maybe like a company like ours, where the enterprise, the business can get the ROI in as less as 3 to 6 months. So these solutions are there out there, and it's not a research intensive, 5 year kind of a plan. So that's gone are those days. So today the solutions are available. It's all about adopting them. And in terms of your question as to what is the concern or how should a business owner look at it, I think probably someone also mentioned in the panel, the right way to do it is identify the pain point, the problem statement that you want to solve. What are the acceptable metrics around it? And basis that, deploy a solution as a pilot once, and you should only take it forward if the acceptable benchmark has been achieved as part of the pilot. And in most of the situations today, those benchmarks would be achieved.
All right, fair enough. So, as what Manish has mentioned, that these all concerns might be valid, but they probably exist 10 years back in time. Now the technology has really evolved. It is plug and play. It is on the cloud. You don't need to invest too much. Probably you can get notifications, pings if something is going wrong in real time, and that should help. And they are pretty inexpensive. I think companies like Manish's, companies like Camcom, even the solutions which are being done by big companies like Wipro, we have to take a look at them and with a clear mindset and with no notions or prejudices that this is expensive or difficult to handle, or oh, I need a CIO, I need a big setup. Things are becoming much easier. It's actually true democratization. So let's quickly take 15 seconds, 30 seconds to wrap up, give our closing remarks. I would request each of the speakers, so we can start with Parna. If Parna, you're there. 15 seconds, 30 seconds, closing remarks, each speaker.
Yeah, Anuj. See, actually, I think 3 points I will just highlight in a very short, span. One is how to convert the use cases into business cases. It is extremely important. Like many speakers have spoken about this. Bring the right ROI, bring the right paybacks in place so that it makes really interesting for the board members to provide approvals on the investments. Second point is the vendor ecosystem needs maturity in terms of capability, skills, and competencies, and also the internal team also needs to be, skilled, upskilled, or cross-skilled, or to make sure that you have the right skills into your organization who can drive. And the third point is since most of the organizations have a lot of legacies in place, so how to make sure that the legacies are converted into smart thinking, design thinking, and how to make sure that I'm talking about especially the functional teams who are driving most of the functions, how they can cope up with the changes which are happening. So change management will be the last part. I think that's important to drive in the organization. Thank you.
Fair enough, Parna. Hilal San, your closing remarks, sir.
So, what I believe, Anuj, that, we are the business leaders and we are using technology for, business gains. And if it is clear to us, then we should come up with the clear-cut business case. Technology fascination will not take us far. So we have to definitely think about, adding value to the business, and that should be our starting point. Second, Nirvana mentioned, and I would, definitely agree with him, that AI is kind of IA, and hence we have to be extremely careful as to what kind of ecosystem we are having in terms of the readiness, in terms of data, processes, people, that, and then only, we can make a very successful implementation of AI. That's my take on it.
That's beautiful, Hilal San. So I think Nirvan's punchline has become a hit, that AI is actually IA. Great, fantastic. Okay, so coming to Mr. Pravin, your closing remarks.
Yeah. So I'll quickly, I'll say 2 points. One is, AI and technology both are becoming democratized. Like big data was democratized data, you're seeing AI democratized experience, right? And technology and AI will move to the backdrop, right? A lot of businesses today, the largest retailer in the world says that they're not a retail company, they're a technology company, right? So technology is almost getting embedded into every industry, and every industry is leveraging it. So the entry level barriers for many of these technologies have dropped, and that's one reason why we are seeing a very rapid growth in the last 6 years towards maturity. So I would say that AI and a blend of emerging technologies are not as expensive as what they used to be about 5 years back or 10 years back. I'm going to see everybody. I'm sure everybody's going to look at it differently going forward. And the right use case, the right problem space becomes most important. Technology can fit in and solve the problem once the problem is very, very well articulated and well defined.
That's fantastic. So the prices have gone down in the last 5 years. So we can only expect things to get better in the next 5 years, surely. So Manish, your closing remarks, please.
Sure. So I would like to kind of conclude on this note that AI is an enabler, uh, and it's only it can only go to a distance if the problem is well defined. So a very important piece is the problem statement has to be well defined. As Pranabda mentioned, the change management after that is very important. With these two things in place, the project management is done properly. AI can do wonders. And a closing remark I would say is AI is much closer, much affordable in your proximity than you think. So just give it a try. It's much easier and can actually do wonders.
That's beautiful. So that's coming straight from the heart of a techie who loves AI. Fantastic, great. So next, I would request Nirvan to please share his closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Anuj. I think I've spoken enough, like maybe visualization as well. But no, see, it all depends on the priority. One, the definition of the use cases, and the priority of the use cases that go behind it, and make it achieve the respective business uh, what it wants. That's more important, and the moment that starts happening and the business starts seeing the benefit is when this certain technology will start propagating on its own, in whether it's in the boardroom or otherwise. So that's where I want to end.
That's well said, Nirvan. I couldn't agree more with you on that. Uh, we have to go beyond the buzzword aspect. It has to deliver. It has to be in line with the corporate objectives. The people in the boardroom should not get bored. They should be excited by the technology. Okay. So, Vikrant, your closing remarks, please.
Between the convenience and the benefits and the rights of the consumers. Like, I mean, that question was very apt here, that as a consumer or even as a SME, so I think everything would boil down to having a right balance between the convenience offered, the benefits being offered by AI, and the legality and the legal issues regarding the data being collected and the liability issues being there. So those have to go tandem, and you have to keep that in mind, be it as a owner, as a consumer, or as a business entity. So that balance has to be maintained, I believe.
That's beautiful. I think with this, we like to end this discussion because we're already 2 minutes up, and I think we couldn't have asked for a better discussion on AI. There could not have been a better way to start this program, the fifth WAFit. Thanks a ton, gentlemen, for your inputs, and we have a small felicitation ceremony also for each one of you. Please stay logged in. So, Anita ma'am, over to you, and to Kunal.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think that was a very interesting discussion on the progress and the risks and the myriad possibilities of AI in the industry. And please do accept a small token of our appreciation for your presence here today. Mr. Hilal Khan, CIO, Honda Cars, India. Mr. Manish Gupta, co-founder and CEO, Rezo.ai. Mr. Pravin Hungund, Chief Technologist and Global Head Technovation Center, CTO Office, Wipro Limited. Mr. Nirvan Biswas, CTO, National Bulk Handling Corporation. Mr. Vikrant Rana, Managing Partner, SS Rana and Company. Mr. Parna Ghosh, Group CIO, Minda. And Mr. Anuj Guglani, CEO, World Auto Forum. Thank you once more, gentlemen.